So hello and welcome back everybody to the Just One More Level podcast. I'm your co-host Christian.
And I'm your co-host John.
And today we are going to be talking about some God of War on the PS2/3. I played it on the PlayStation 3. John played it on the PS2. What's your history? The OG. What's your history with the God of War series here, John?
I don't have much of a history. I have heard of it, and I have seen it played.
Yeah, sure.
I own God of War. I have the game, and I have the third game for the PS3. Okay. But
so just missing number 2 and then the new one and the spin-offs.
Yeah. And it's just something that I picked up kind of on a whim. I found it's at the exchange or at a flea market, and I picked it up because I had heard of it and because I knew it was good.
Right.
I had tried to play maybe just the first level before, I think, just to get a feel of it. And I never really picked it back up. I never really played on through it. Not because I didn't enjoy it. I just never found the time. But in preparation for this, I kind of sat down and got a little bit more immersed in it. And it is incredible. Absolutely.
I agree 100%. I love it. It's one of my favorite game series of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And I said it, if anybody's seen the live stream or if you see my YouTube videos about the game or anything like that before you see this podcast, you'll know that I talked a fair bit about how much more I enjoyed the original game or a couple of games than the new one even. I just think it holds up incredibly well.
It does. Yes. I really busting up my notes here. I really enjoyed the way it offers this action-packed tutorial at the beginning without feeling like it's holding your hand.
Yeah, the whole beginning, like throwing you on the ship right up against enemies and whatnot. The only thing it really tells you is like, hey, these are your attack buttons. This is how you dodge. This is how you grab people. Go to it. Like,
yeah, and it's even for the PS2, because I'm playing it on the PlayStation 2, I'm playing it on an old CRT television.
Which is just awesome, in my opinion, that you busted out a CRT, and
Oh, absolutely. And it just does, it handles amazingly. The control is extremely sharp and responsive. The artwork is incredibly atmospheric, and it really represents the feel and tone they were going for. It's really well rendered for the time. I don't know how they were able to hide so many loading screens just behind different things. Every once in a while, the game will kind of the game will kind of pause and it'll say loading.
Sure.
But it's always really quick, except for the original copy that I played, which was a travesty.
Yeah, so for everybody at home, his original copy there, he got about 3 hours into the game, 3.5, something like that.
Not even, like an hour and a half, maybe.
Hour and a half into the game, and then it one of those loading screens came up, and it just nope, you were done. That's all you got.
But everywhere else in the game, I can see where they did hide the loading screens. They hid them cleverly in the environment, like you would round a corner.
Right.
And the next part of the map would load up, but 9 times out of 10, it's seamless. You just round the corner and the next part of the map is there. Every once in a while, at least on the PS2 version. I'm not sure about the PS3 remaster.
It does as well,
Yeah, every once in a while you round a corner and it pauses for just a minute. It pulses the loading, words on the screen.
Right,
and then it gets right back in. I don't know how they managed to do that.
Yes.
So much going on.
Just a little bit about how they did that is the trick of the camera. The camera is fixed. So what they were able to do is everything behind the camera, they're able to either just completely get rid of to clear up memory or have everything off camera just be like very low resolution or just empty space. And that's one of the things that they talked about. There's some documentaries about the game and whatnot. One of the things they've talked about in those documentaries is how by having that fixed camera angle, they were able to have more polygons, more detailed, this very lush world, comparatively, it being on the PS2.
Right.
Having this very lush, immersive world compared to other games that were coming out at the time, and that's the main reason why they were able to do that. Plus, it's also a Sony-owned company making a game on a Sony console, so of course they're gonna know some of the tips and tricks and things, and gonna know the console a little bit better than outside developers.
Yeah.
But I agree. In the quick loading screens, the far and few between quick loading screens, I think, really help get you into the action because you don't get pulled out as often, right? You get to just, once you're in it, you're just going through this massive world from point A to point B, just constantly going through without interruption. I agree that it's amazing. It's great.
Well, then, if that's the case, then I have a bone to pick with Rockstar over Grand Theft Auto 5. Because what is going? That's also a Sony-owned thing. Like every, Grand Theft
Rockstar's not
Auto,
owned by Sony. No.
It's not owned by Sony?
No,
Because
no.
all the old
Rockstar
Grand
is a
Theft Auto
third-party
games came
card.
out on the PlayStation.
Yeah, well, that's just because the only other choice for console was Nintendo, and not only was Nintendo not very into the whole adult thing, but their consoles tend to be lower powered as well. So,
okay.
Yeah, not so much that it was owned by Sony. It was just Sony was their only real choice.
No, I still have a bone to pick because that's ridiculous. You wait like 2.5 minutes for those loading screens, and that's on the PS3.
Yeah, even now, Grand Theft Auto 5, even on the PS4, had a pretty ridiculous loading screen, if I'm not mistaken, in the beginning of the game. So yeah, no, I 100% I know what you mean.
Wow. But anyway, moving on from that.
Yeah.
The only downfall I found, if any, about the control is occasionally I will get locked in a combo.
Sure.
And Kratos will keep attacking, and I want to move. And that's more my fault than anything. And as I play more of the game, and as I get better at learning the tells that the different enemy types have, like you eventually learn, when they're going to do what attack just by observing, and you're able to say, okay, I'm only going to hit 3 times and then I'm going to move, or I'm only going to hit 3 times and then I'm going to block. But
that's what I was going to say. You really, I honestly feel they did a very good job at that.
They did.
The ability to cancel out of animations, to get to block or to dodge roll or whatever, as well as you mentioned the telegraphing that the enemies do to let you know that they're about to do a move or what move they're about to do. For the most part, I feel like they did a very good job with that as well. That is one downside of having the fixed camera, in my opinion. It's something that I complained about while playing the game was the Gorgons, right? The Medusa-like creatures. Sometimes they get off screen and they have very fast attacks where they whip their tail around, and sometimes they'll get behind the camera, so you won't be able to see them and you'll just kind of get hit from behind. So that is one downside to not being able to control the camera and whatnot, and that's kind of cheap. I'll agree with that. But as a more experienced player, somebody who's played a lot more of the God of War series, especially the first couple of them, I think they did an amazing job at giving you the ability to cancel out of your animations, to be able to dodge roll, to be able to block, as well as just the breadth of moves, the variety of moves that you have, considering it's a 2-button system, basically.
Yeah. I like going off of what you said about the Medusa things there. I remember specifically this one part in that area I was stuck on in my first game disc. The Athens battlegrounds. You're just moving through the city, and there's just a variety of enemies, and you're just sort of walking down a winding road, and there's different things off to the sides that you can collect, and enemies, and 2 of them there's these 2 like minotaurs that pop out, and you have to fight them, and then behind them is a Medusa.
Yeah.
So I learned pretty quickly that I could draw the Minotaurs forward and just fight them, and then move on and fight the Medusa. But if I walk too far, I would have to fight all 3, which is insane.
Right.
So I learned that I could like draw them out, and oh my goodness, the button mashing! I cannot get my thumb to move that fast. Every time you get like one of the things down, one of the Minotaurs, you get them on the ground, and then there's a quick time thing where you have to mash circle in order to get your knife down their throat. But I can't do it. I have to literally hold the controller on my leg and hit it with my index finger in order to get the button to go that fast. I can't do it with my thumb. It's not possible.
See, I don't really have that problem, to be honest with you. I will say that you don't technically have to, just because I know, spoiler alert, I know that you're still playing the game. You don't technically have to kill the Minotaurs that way. It's just by killing enemies with quick time events, you change the drop that you get whenever they die. So you're guaranteed health with the Minotaurs, if I'm not mistaken, if you do it that way.
Yeah, health.
So I often save them
with the Medusas.
Yeah, go ahead.
Magic with the Medusas is the drop you get if you kill them with the quick time.
Yeah. So I often save the Minotaurs till last, to be honest with you. If there's like a big group of enemies or whatever, I'll save them till last or until the middle. That way I can get a quick heal in the middle of the battle to help me finish off whatever the group of enemies are.
Well, there was this one part I've played, full disclosure, I've played like 5.5 hours of the game now.
Right.
I love the game. I'm really far into it. I'm at the temple of with Pandora's box that's on the back of the Titan. You know?
Right.
And you got to go through this temple and solve a bunch of puzzles. There's this one part with this crazy Indiana Jones trap where if you take a shield, the platform falls, and this giant platform comes out of the left and starts pushing towards the right. And there's just an onslaught of enemies. I've never fought that many. Like your little red bar that fills up when you kill an enemy.
Right.
It'll fill up so far, and then it'll change from 0 to 1 to let you know you filled up a whole unit, and then it'll change to 2 and to 3. I made it all the way to 3 in just one moment, just fighting that number of enemies. It was nuts.
Yeah, there are definitely moments where they really send a lot of enemies at you.
Yeah.
But again, that's one of the things that I really like about God of War, though, to be honest, is just it's so action-packed, almost 24/7. And that's, I know a lot of people gave slack to God of War because it was very mindless, very adolescent, and just, you're just murdering guys, just ripping them apart. There's every God of War game, at least the first 3, had like the sex mini game in it, right? And there's a lot of naked enemies and things like that.
There is. That's
so it's very immature in sections, and it got a lot of slack for that. But honestly, it's one of the things I really enjoyed about it, right?
Yeah, it's the same reason that people love gory horror movies,
Yeah, exactly. It's just mindless fun.
Visceral and yeah. That's something else I wrote down here, that the move types are visceral and satisfying. You just killing guys has never been so fun in a video game.
Right, exactly. And honestly, that is like, there's moves that you can do when you grab them where you just like grab 2 halves of a guy and just like rip them apart, right? And they literally like just come in half, and then there's some blood and red orbs that come flying out of them.
Right.
It's just so much mindless fun, and I mean, I understand that's not what everybody's looking for in a video game, I guess, but I really enjoy it.
Some of the puzzles can be a bit challenging, because some of the puzzles combine platform elements.
Sure,
you have to complete a platforming stage in order to solve the puzzle. Sometimes that's combined even more with a time limit of some kind. And they find clever ways to do that. I know saving the Oracle in Athens, there's a time limit. You have to parkour your way all the way up this course in order to grab her before she falls. There's like a little hourglass on the screen that's pouring sand. It's a clever little way to have a time limit. And then there's another parts where, again, you're in Pandora's temple, and you have to clear all the enemies on the screen. There's a lot of parts where you have to clear the enemies on the screen, including the ones that keep spawning. Before this little red force field will disappear. You have like a red force field blocking you from moving. And after you clear the enemies, that disappears before you can advance, and that adds like some tension. And there's one part in Pandora's temple where you're on this big wooden floor that's split in half, and if you don't clear the enemies in time, the floor drops, and it's insta-death.
Right. And that is one downside of this game, is there are some insta-death moments. Now the checkpoint system isn't too bad, so thankfully you usually don't end up replaying a whole lot of the game whenever you just die in battle or have an insta-death moment or whatever like that. But you were mentioning like the platforming and puzzling and whatnot. I do really like a lot of the puzzles in the game. There wasn't many in the first. I played about an hour and a half of the game, approximately hour and a half to prepare for the podcast here. So in my playtime just recently, there wasn't a whole lot of puzzles. But I do remember just from playing it so much in the past that I do really enjoy the puzzles. I think there's some really interesting things that they've done. Most of them were fairly simple puzzles, but still a nice little change of pace from the normal just action-packed, ripping guys in half and whatnot. And of course, you're usually doing that in the middle of your puzzle solving as well.
Yes.
But the platforming, I do think, is something that got better as the game went along. But never was really perfected, in my opinion. The platforming in general is just a little bit, it's not that it's bad at all, but there are times where I was jumping between platforms and things like that, and I felt a little bit cheated. Like I should have been able to make that jump, or the hitbox was a little off, or everything was just a little too loose or whatever.
A lot of the times when you're climbing and you're forced to fight while climbing. I felt that way.
Right.
Yeah, like there's guys coming either on all sides of you, and you can't possibly not take a hit, or I don't know. It's just sort of the mechanic for attacking while climbing. I don't feel like is satisfying enough.
Yeah,
to,
and honestly, most of the
justify
time, it's
having to do
better
that.
just to grab people, in my experience.
Yeah.
Because if you grab somebody while you're climbing or on a rope or something like that, it's pretty much an like a certain instant kill.
Right.
Whereas if you're just like hitting people, it's just, it takes so long to just swipe away at enemies. Especially I was playing on hard mode, so everybody has more health and deals more damage. It just takes so long whenever you are trying to just kill people by whipping them with your what do they call the weapon in this one, in the
blades,
first one?
The Blades of Chaos.
Blades of Chaos, that was it. I keep thinking Chains of Olympus, but that's I think the second game.
That's another. Okay.
But anyways, and I will say in my time that I was playing, that was like the number one time for me dying was when I was like crossing that rope. About an hour into the game, half hour into the game, as well as just climbing in general. I just feel like was not necessarily the hardest part, but they throw so many enemies at you, and you can't really dodge or anything on a rope.
No.
So you're just stuck trying to attack them as fast as possible so that they die before you do, essentially.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I get it. It varies it up, but I thought it was kind of funny that regardless of the enemy that is on the rope or on the vine wall, it's funny because if you can get them in a certain place, you can hit 2 or 3 of them at the same time, and they all react identically. You can make them dance a little bit, which is it's kind of weird, like what's going on there.
Right.
But I will talk about the first level boss, Hydra. Crazy boss, really difficult for me coming into it for the first time. But I can't say too many bad things about it because, as we've already established, the checkpoint system is very forgiving. So when you lose to Hydra, you don't respawn at the beginning of the level or your last save. It just drops you off right before the boss, so that you have it.
Yeah,
as
it's really
many
not
times,
bad. Yeah.
As many times to fight him as you can so you can get better at fighting it. And that's something so many games don't do, and they get wrong. And it makes you feel so frustrated trying to get this boss down because then you have to go
because not only do you have to do the boss, but I know exactly.
The rest of the stage that you just did. But it was really good, and it's a really good ending for the tutorial section of the game because it combines everything you just learned. It combines attacking, dodge rolling, blocking, and puzzle solving to an extent.
For sure, yeah.
Because you have to go up on this platform and drop something on one of the heads, and then repeat it with the other one, and then you get this magic ability right before the boss, the Rage of Poseidon, and you have to use that to beat the boss at the end, or at least it's very, very helpful for you to do that.
Right. Yeah.
When you're fighting the main head at the top. So I really like the way it kind of like wrapped everything up from the tutorial in a bow and said, here, this is what it will be like fighting bosses in the future.
Right.
So get used to it.
Get used to it, yeah.
And I haven't actually run into another end-level boss like Hydra.
There certainly are more of them in the game, but you just haven't played far enough yet. Mm-hmm. The Hydra I do think was really interesting. The two in the bottom, the Hydra fight, you arrive at this ship, and there's 2 smaller heads on the bottom of the ship, and you have to whittle them down till they get to a low enough level of health, and then you have to impale them with a sharp spike, basically, so that they're pinned down, because otherwise they'll get healed by the main head and then start causing mayhem again. Right. So you have to kill both of those, or well, not kill them, but pin them both down, and then you climb up to the giant one up top. And I will say, though, that the 2 down bottom honestly were kind of boring in my opinion. They were very easy to telegraph, and because I was playing on a harder difficulty, the amount of health they had was just kind of ridiculous, so it took a very long time to whittle them down low enough to impale them. So I will say that was a little bit much.
The one on the other side, before you get one of them down, starts sucking you in.
So it keeps pulling you away as you're trying to attack the other one. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was more because of the difficulty level that I was playing at. If I was playing on a lower difficulty level, everything would have been much faster, so it wouldn't have been that big of a deal. I mean, and even on hard, it wasn't that bad, but that is one of the things I will say is that at times enemies can feel like real damage sponges, which is just, it's not the end of the world, but it is a small point against the game.
And it gets way worse, as I'm sure as you up the difficulty in the game.
Yeah, very hard gets a little bit worse. I don't remember exactly how they regulate the difficulty. I believe once you go up to very hard, things don't have that much more health. You just take a lot more damage, I believe. But I could be wrong. It's been years since I've played on very hard. So
that makes sense. The couple of times that I would get stuck in a spot where I would die over and over, the game would patronize me by asking me if I want to switch to easy.
Yeah.
No, I'm not doing that. Just give me a few more tries.
I do think, I'm not positive, this isn't something I've ever had confirmed, but I have always felt like this is one of those games where if you die in the same area a couple times, it actually makes it easier on you just behind the scenes.
Really?
Again, I'm not positive it does. I know there are games out there that do that, but I think this might be one of those games where if you die in the same spot 2-3 times, it actually just secretly makes the game a little bit easier for you.
That's just rude. That's not what I want. I want it good. Well, it would say in parentheses whenever that message popped up, would you like to switch the game to easy mode? It said in parentheses the only thing that changes is the combat. So like the level design is the same. All of the secrets are in the same place. All the puzzles are the same.
Definitely. Yeah.
The only thing that changes is, like you said, how much damage you take and how much health they have.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's at least nice.
Yeah. So I mean, if you're not very good at the game, or if you're new to the series or whatever like that, you can still experience everything God of War has to offer. Just it's a little bit easier for you to get through it. I think that's fair. We've mentioned it before on the podcast that I'm a big fan, I believe you are as well, of difficulty settings in games.
Yes.
Just being able to give everybody that opportunity to play through a game, I think, is always a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very helpful because I did try to play on hard mode. I couldn't nail Hydra on hard mode.
Right.
I had to switch down to normal mode just to get through it. And I've been playing through on normal mode, and I feel like I'm really getting the hang of it now. So I can probably play through it a second time on hard mode.
Yeah, and I mean, my first time playing it, granted, I was relatively young, around 13-ish the first time that I played through it, but I definitely didn't play on the hardest difficulty setting the first time I got it either. I don't think I played on easy, but I know I didn't play any higher than normal. But I loved the game so much that I then, a few months later, I was like, you know what, I want to play God of War again. And then I played it on the next difficulty setting on hard. And I was like, you know what, that was pretty good. And I know where all the secrets are and whatnot. And God of War has this cool thing if you complete it where you can unlock costumes for Kratos. And having those having those costumes does different things, like giving you extra damage or extra mana or infinite mana, things like that.
No way.
Okay. So then I ended up playing through the game on very hard with those like new costumes and things like that. Mm-hmm. So I played through this game many times. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, at this point, anytime I play an old God of War game, I just automatically skip right to the hardest difficulty that I can play, which this time was just hard because I don't have any of my old save files anymore. But
yeah. I would love to be able to say I beat God of War on God mode. That's
right. And you'll get there if you decide to keep playing through the games. I promise you will get there. Mm-hmm. I was just looking up the list real quick. So, short spoiler if anybody doesn't want to know, but there are at least 5 different costumes that you can get. There's a Chef of War, so a chef costume. Mm-hmm. Bubbles, I don't remember which one that is. Tycoonius, Dairy Bastard, which, if I'm not mistaken, is actually like a cow costume. Like, you're a cow, right? Like, you're wearing a cow costume with like a giant pair of udders and whatnot. And I don't, as a euphemism, I just mean like honestly, just a giant udder on your stomach. And then the coolest one, in my opinion, is the Ares armor. So you actually get a dress as the God of War, which is really cool.
Right.
But yeah, so those are different bonuses that you get for completing the game.
And I haven't beat the game yet, but I have heard tell of what the storyline ends up becoming.
I think most people know at this point, especially with the whole transition to the new series of games. It's pretty easy for people to figure out
to guess what happened.
Yeah.
Let me take a stab. Spoiler alert. I guess,
sure.
Because I'm guessing at this point, but I would imagine, considering the main villain of the game seems to be Ares, the God of War.
Sure.
And you are playing as Kratos, who is slowly accumulating the power of a god.
Yeah.
I would imagine that at the end of the game, you defeat Ares and become the God of War.
I mean, I won't confirm or deny, but but you should be, yeah.
Yeah, and considering the setting change of the newest title,
Right.
I would imagine that that's not good enough for Kratos, and throughout the next couple of games, he polishes the rest of them off.
Again, I cannot confirm or deny. Well, I can, but I won't confirm or deny.
Okay, yeah.
We'll just leave it at that. But
Just leave it at that. Yeah.
I don't think you'll be disappointed if you continue to play the series.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I full disclosure, I have played the first level of God of War 3
Sure.
at some point. So I know what
A
happens
little bit,
to Poseidon
Right.
at the beginning of God of War 3, which is amazing, by the way. That
Yes.
whole opening is
Yes.
incredible with the Titans and things.
Oh yes, yes. We'll get there eventually. I'm sure we'll cover that on the podcast sooner or later.
Oh yeah. But one more thing about the camera movement and things before I start to touch a little bit more on story.
Yeah.
The camera movement for me is taking some getting used to. I'm not really that used to fixed camera games. I've played them before. I've played some old Resident Evil games.
Of course, yeah.
Different things like that. But I'm very used to more modern camera controls or strict side scrollers.
Right.
You know,
right.
where you can either manipulate the camera behind you, third person or first person, or you don't have to worry about the camera because it's platform side scroll.
Right. Right.
So this is definitely a very different sort of experience for me.
Right. Right.
But I will say, of all of the fixed camera games that I have personally played, this has the most dynamic and fluid camera movement
Right.
of any fixed camera game that I've ever personally played.
And that's what I was going to say. Even though
really
this
well
game
designed.
does have a fixed camera, they did it so well. Like, it's not
Yes.
fixed in the sense that the original Resident Evil games were, where it's just the camera's in one corner of the room and it never moves.
Right.
It follows you the entire time and kind of readjusts depending on where you're standing in a level and things like that. But you have no direct control over the camera. And like I said, honestly, after I've gotten used to it, I prefer the camera in this first game over the controllable camera in God of War 3. Or, sorry, not God of War 3, and just God of War, the new one for PS4. That being said, though, they did do a really cool thing, and they kind of did this with the original God of War games, but they took it to the extreme with the new one, where it's one continuous camera shot in the newest game. In the newest game, so like in these ones, the camera kind of cuts for cutscenes, but the rest of the time it's one continuous camera shot. In the newest game, because of all the advancements in technology, they were able to make the cutscenes completely in-engined as well. So even when there's a cutscene, it never cuts. The camera just sweeps to the side or whatever, but Kratos is still like in the frame. The whole thing is shown as one continuous camera shot with no cuts. It's just Kratos' story from beginning to end. Yeah, it's really cool how they were able to pull that off. And it's very cinematic, and I would kind of say the same about this game, though, in the way that they frame the character and the bosses and the enemies and everything like that. It's a very cinematic experience in many ways, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm noticing here too. Like I'm watching back some of the footage that you played, and it's It's 16:9 aspect ratio. It's a widescreen aspect ratio, which is not what the original game was. So I'm wondering. Is it stretched or just cropped differently, or is it more open?
I think it's a little bit more open and cropped. I think it's a little mix of both. But that being said, I think it was still in 4:3. But if you had an HD TV back then, when the PS2 came out, there was a button combination that you could hold down whenever you started the game up that would display it in progressive scan instead of interlaced.
Yeah, there's even a menu option that in the options menu, in like the main options menu.
Oh, really?
Where you can switch it from full screen or widescreen. I'm not able to notice much because my widescreen TV that I have, the lovely cheap brand that I own, is a non-anamorphic widescreen television.
Sure.
Meaning that it does not fit to screen.
Right.
Very very well, at least. So when I switched to the game option on the PS2 on that screen, it didn't change anything. It just made it look distorted. And then when I switched over and played it on my CRT, of course it's full screen, so why would I change it?
Yeah. And with the way a lot of old game consoles worked, a little bit of sidetracking here, even though they would have a widescreen option, you usually had to manually set that in your TV settings to stretch.
Right.
So they changed the game itself, like the way it rendered, but didn't change the output resolution at all. So it was still outputting a 4:3 signal, but it changed the way it rendered everything. So once your TV stretched it to 16:9, it would look correct. And that's how they usually did it. So that might be another reason why it kind of acted up on your TV, because even though it was changing, you mentioned it looking a little weird, it was changing the way the game would render, but you would have then had to go into the settings in your TV and tell it to stretch out the image, which, as you mentioned, yours was non-anamorphic, so it didn't automatically fill the screen, which... Yeah.
Right. yeah. I mean, I'm not missing anything though. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No,
So
the game I
it's
played
all
it 100 hours at least on an old CRT when I was a child. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. But the as far as the story goes, I guess we can get into that just a little bit. I haven't experienced that much of it other than the cutscene.
Right.
But from what I gather, Kratos is a tortured soul.
Yep.
Who had a family at one point. He
Yeah.
was the commander of a Spartan fleet, of
Yes.
an army. Not a fleet, sorry, it's not naval, it was an army.
Right.
He was in charge of the Spartan army, and his lust for blood and power either drove his wife away, or his wife and son or daughter, his child, were
Yeah.
killed.
Daughter, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, his wife and child were killed
Yeah.
because of his constant lust for power. And the game opens with Kratos attempting suicide.
Yes.
For some reason that is yet unknown to me.
Yeah. And I mean, I could spoil it for you, but since you're playing through the game, I won't. You're on the right track, but there's definitely more to that whole story there. And it'll make more sense. Now, the story always kind of took a bit of a backseat. There is definitely a story in this game, but I mean, it really was, I feel like, meant to be, you know, just a theme park of murder, essentially. Yeah, no, that you're right. Yeah, that's the gist of the story up to where you're at least. Again, it's hard for me to say much because I don't want to spoil anything for you,
Right.
And I don't want to spoil too much for the viewers at home either. So, or listeners, podcasting more of a listening experience, but you know.
Yeah, and other than that, I just I've gotten a lot of cutscenes of Athena,
Right,
and
yeah.
the Oracle of Athens, explaining to me with their polygonal boobies and
Right.
folklore of the camera. I was
Right.
honestly shocked. I knew it was rated M for things like that,
Yeah,
but there's like the Medusas in game are just bare
topless. Yeah, yep.
The whole game. Anytime you fight one of those Medusa enemies, they're just bare chested. And I'm like, all right, this might as well happen.
Yeah. I mean, it fits, right? Because that's just how things were depicted back
in ancient
then.
Greece.
Yeah.
That's how everything was. People were just, oh my goodness, just sex and violence. Greek mythology is nothing but sex and violence.
Right.
So it's very, very true to Greek mythology. As far
Honestly,
as I know it.
and that's the thing. I don't know a whole lot about Greek mythology. And it's kind of a weird thing where, like, with Disney, the Disney universe, let's say, I know more about the Disney universe now from playing Kingdom Hearts than I do actually watching Disney movies. Just because even though I've watched all the Disney movies, most of them multiple times, I've played Kingdom Hearts so much more. And that's kind of the same thing with this. I don't know a whole lot about Greek mythology, but what I do know, I know more of it from God of War now than I do actually from reading about or learning in school about Greek mythology.
Yeah.
And I know that
fair.
it's not 100% accurate, but I do also know that they did at least kept like a lot of tropes for the characters and things like that accurate, right? It's like Aphrodite is still, well, Aphrodite, Athena is still the motherly kind of helpful character. Ares is still this, you know, behemoth that's trying to murder everybody all the time, like.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I learned, I think I'm learning more of Greek mythology from this game than I ever did watching like Percy Jackson or Hercules.
Right.
Because I watched Hercules, the cartoon as a kid, of course, and then that live action Hercules series with Kevin Sorbo.
I never watched it. I've heard of it, but no, I've never.
And Xena Warrior Princess.
Oh yeah, I've never seen it, but definitely know Xena Warrior.
That's something that was my mom's jam back in the late '90s. Man, that was always on TV.
Right.
That and the X-Files. Oh yeah. Yeah. They even made an animated movie. I forget what it was on, but the trailer for it was Xena Warrior Princess and Hercules, Kevin Sorbo's Hercules, but animated in a movie together, fighting like the Titans of Olympus.
Nice.
It was crazy. But yeah, so that's not much more than that. I'm really picking up on the story. I'm guessing that it's going to get more fleshed out for me.
Yeah, definitely. Because not only that,
it opens with that suicide attempt, and then it pops up 3 weeks earlier.
Right.
That's when you start the game. So
that's yeah, exactly. And then there's so in the original series here, there's the trilogy, God of War 1, 2, and 3, but there were also a couple of side games that help explain kind of what happened before the first game. And then there was also a God of War Ascension, I think it was called, which that's the one God of War game I've never beaten, so I don't know exactly what happens in that one. But there are a handful. There's a lot of games in the series now, is what I'm trying to say. So there is a fair amount of lore, surprisingly, for a game that's all about just hack and slash, beating dudes up and whatnot. There's a surprising bit of lore if you're into that sort of thing.
Just killing guys.
Yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, that's 90% of the lore too, is, this dude died this way. But yeah.
Pretty much.
Jeez.
I love it though.
Yeah, no, it is really, really great. And I mean, if everybody can't tell at home, we're both really enjoying the experience. It's great.
Absolutely.
I'm tempted now. If it weren't for so many games on my backlog that I'm already trying to stream and record and things like that, I would 100% be doing a playthrough of God of War right now. And honestly, as soon as I complete 1 or 2 games off of my list, I just finished up Fallout New Vegas for the first time ever. I just actually beat that game. But I still have a few more games I want to try to get off my backlog. But once I do, I'm probably going to do God of War on stream and or YouTube, because I just enjoyed it that much. Like, it's a lot of fun.
Right. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Forget about just one more level. I want to play the whole franchise.
Right. Just one more game. Come on. Which, I mean, the new game is coming out here relatively soon. I think they said spring or summer of 2021, God of War Ragnarok. It might be a little bit later. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit there. Boogies were starting to pop up with, for anybody who's watching on Twitch. Twitch is a little iffy when it's in game. Like, God of War isn't on their list of banned games that you're allowed to stream, but they do also say no nudity, so it's a little iffy on how that all works. So I'm just going to go ahead and skip forward a little bit there. But,
I mean, they're so polygonal.
Yeah.
You really even, I don't know. It's sort of like Renaissance paintings, right?
Well, I think that's kind of the thing, right? This isn't like an explicit hentai game or anything like that, and I think that's why it's not on the banned list. But there are. This definitely isn't. If you have children, right? This definitely isn't the sort of game to play around them if you're not comfortable with them seeing nudity and things like that, though.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of gore and a fair amount of nudity.
Right.
Definitely. But
tons.
yeah. I mean, I wouldn't really say tons so much, because I mean, there is the sex minigame, and then there are the Medusa/Gorgons where they're topless, but it's not like, besides the sex minigame area, it's nothing like front and center, usually, at least. But
I have not yet seen this supposed sex minigame you speak of, so
I skipped past it. It's right whenever you first get to this ship and there's the 2 girls in bed. They're telling you to come back to bed with them. You can actually hop in that bed. If you jump into that bed, you can have sex with them. Now, the camera pans to the vase that's on the side of the table, and then it turns into a QuickTime event, and you have to do the QuickTimes right, and your controller starts shaking, and they start making their noises in the background, and then the vase starts to shake real bad, and then if you get all of the QuickTime events perfect, the vase will fall off the table and break, and you'll get a big bonus and experience. Yeah.
You get red orbs from that?
Yeah, you get a bonus experience from that. Yeah.
That would have been great to have early game.
Right. Yep. And that's one of the things, honestly, I was kind of upset that wasn't in the remaster or reboot of the franchise, because I had a lot of fun with those. I always thought they were cheesy, but it was just a cornerstone of the series up until that point, having those sex mini games. And then they took it out. They made a more mature game, and I mean mature as in like maturity level, not as in content. Yeah.
But yeah. Oh, for goodness sake. Oh, well. What are you going to do? I actually did discover, I don't think it would be considered a game break or some kind of secret, but there is an area where if you wanted to, you could infinitely farm minotaurs. In the Athens battleground, of course, where I was stuck forever.
Right.
You can, there's this little area where you veer off to the side and you get locked in a room with minotaurs.
Okay.
Infinitely respawning minotaurs. But what you also have in that room is an infinitely respawning magic chest.
Yes.
Because the puzzle in the room is that you have to freeze the minotaur on a button in order to open the gate at the end of the room to escape.
Right.
So, and if you beat a minotaur normally, if you just freeze him and then kill him, he doesn't drop health, he drops red orbs.
Right.
So, you can kill a couple to get health.
Right.
And then it just infinitely frees them over and over and over again.
Right.
To get as many red orbs as you want.
There is that sort of thing in there, and if you really wanted to, you could. But honestly, I think that kind of defeats the purpose of the game. If I'm being honest with you,
it would be such a slow grind.
You're right. Especially because, like I said, there's the costume system. If you do certain things in the game and then replay the game, and one of the costumes, if not more, gives you extra orbs every time you kill an enemy.
Gotcha.
So if you're really going for that completionist run of like leveling everything up all the way, it's better, in my opinion, to just play through the game again than it is to spend 5 hours grinding orbs off of minotaurs in the one spot.
Yeah, and I didn't do it that long. I was at it for like a half an hour. I was just curious to see how long it would.
Yeah, if it would just keep going forever. Yeah,
and it does technically, but also considering I didn't have another copy yet to play.
Right. Oh yeah, sure. So you had nothing else that you could really do. Yeah.
Yeah, I had nothing else that I could really do because it would freeze right at the end of that segment.
Right.
There's right at the end of that section of the game, there's like a woman that runs away from you.
Yeah.
And you kind of chase her through some tunnels, and then if you follow her all the way to where she goes, she kills herself because she's afraid of you.
Yeah.
Which.
Yeah. That's something that I don't know if you've picked up on that very much yet, but everybody is scared of the Ghost of Sparta, is what they call him. And they'll explain a little bit more about why he's called the Ghost of Sparta and things like that. But yeah, everybody does tend to be scared of Kratos. And probably for good reason, to be honest.
Oh yeah, I'd be terrified of Kratos.
Right.
But there's that little part right there is where it froze in my game.
Oh yeah, sure. Okay.
You had two different routes you could go. You could either follow her, and it would go to a cutscene.
Right.
And if I ran up the stairs to the platform where she jumps off to kill herself, it would freeze.
Right.
Or if I went to the right and broke down this door that puts you in this other room that has this really reflective floor.
Yeah.
Where you find like a chest or something and you go through a doorway there, it would freeze there too. So just that whole section of the game was dead on my disc.
Real quick, one gripe about the game that just bugs me, and it just popped up again. We're both watching footage that I recorded from when I was playing it.
Yes.
And I had just found one of the secret chests with a phoenix feather. So in this game, there's chests, and chests can give you normally one of three things: health orbs, mana orbs, or experience orbs. There's also two other kinds of chests, though, that give you either a Gorgon Eye or a Phoenix Feather.
Right.
To me, and if you collect a certain number of Gorgon Eyes, you get extra health. If you collect a certain number of Phoenix Feathers, you get extra magic.
Mm-hmm.
That's what irks me. The lore of the Phoenix is that the Phoenix dies and then is reborn. So to me, that's connected to health, right? So in my opinion, whenever you collect like 5 or whatever it is Phoenix Feathers, you should increase your max health. But for some reason, they have that increase your max magic.
Yeah.
Which just bugs me. It's really not that big of a deal at the end of the day, but it's like the Phoenix's whole thing is being reborn getting this extra health, right? And then it's a magic increase that just, I don't know. It just bugs me.
I have a feeling that was one of those things where the developers were like, all right, we need a thing that increases your magic, and we need a thing that increases your health.
What is something that fits in this universe? And
Phoenix and the Gorgon.
Okay. Yeah, and then the eyes of the Gorgon. Well, sure, fuck it, whatever.
Because I thought the Gorgons are what the Minotaurs are called, and the Gorgons do like the since when you kill a Minotaur and rip its head off, you get health. One of their eyes would give you health.
No, Gorgons are the
Medusas.
The Medusas, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So technically in Greek mythology, the Gorgon are each of the three sisters, Stheno, Euryale, and Medusa with snakes for hair. Those are the Gorgon. In this game, Medusa is the only true like named one that I know of, but then there are all of the just common Medusas that pop up, and that's what they call the Gorgon.
I call them Medusas because I'm so used to.
I mean they are basically Medusa. They just
Castlevania. So
right.
In Castlevania games, you have the floating Medusa heads.
Right. Yeah.
That's kind of what it's like. But then again, in Castlevania, you have Medusa heads that float around the screen and get on your nerves. But you also have Medusa, the second level boss.
Right. Yeah.
That floats around.
So and that's what they wanted to avoid in this game, was the whole having the boss Medusa, which you fight, but then also have every common enemy of that type being called the same thing. So they just called them all Gorgon, and then I'll tell you what though, I am really excited for you to play more of these games. I'm so glad that you're enjoying them, just because I want you to see some of the mechanics and battles and things that appear in the later games, because I'm just thinking of like all these cool iconic moments and these cool power-ups and these cool fights and things that happen later on. I'm just like, oh my god, I can't wait for John to see this. I bet he's gonna love it or whatever. And then of course we're not to that point yet.
Yeah, I have most of my powers in my gameplay. I have all but one.
Right.
I have the Rage of Poseidon. I have the Medusa head. I have Zeus's lightning bolts.
Right.
And I just recently got the Blade of Artemis.
Right. Yeah. And I will.
Secondary
one thing
weapon.
I will say is, in my opinion, the other weapons are mostly useless. In my opinion, some fights can technically be easier with them. But from my experience, I would suggest focusing on your magic and blades of whatever, depending what game you're playing. You get different main blades.
Because you get so used to fighting with the Blades of Chaos that you get your moves down, you know?
Right.
Like one of my go-to combos is when you level up the Blades of Chaos, I think to level 2 or 3, you get this move where you can block and by holding L1, and then if you hit square, the attack button, you go into like a helicopter.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm getting into the habit where I am in the game. I'm fighting a lot of like Medusas and Sirens.
Right.
So sorry, Gorgon.
Right. And everybody, I know what you mean. Everybody knows what you mean. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you. Another enemy type just appeared on screen.
Yes.
These guys piss me off so much because you can block like the giant
spiky ball.
Yeah. What do you call that enemy in the beginning though? I'm blanking.
This is a Cyclops.
Yeah, but I mean the enemy in the beginning, the giant 3-headed snake thing.
Oh, Hydra.
Hydra, right? Yeah, you can block this giant Hydra swinging his head around,
but you can't drop this troll's mace.
Yeah, but a little spike ball mace that this dude is throwing at you. If you try to block it, he just fucking destroys you. So the trick is to always dodge to his left. Is the trick to get around it, which I realized very soon. But yeah, it just kills me how you can.
Minotaur. Like the Minotaur, if you get far enough away from the Minotaur, it hits the ground with its axe. Yeah. And it sends out a shockwave. And if you don't double jump perfectly, it knocks you out.
Right.
And it cancels your block or your attack, whatever you were doing.
Right.
Completely cancels it, and you just fall.
You get used to it eventually, but yeah, it just annoys me. Just little things like that. Again, not a big deal at the end of the day, but it's like, why? Why can I do this but not that? Anyways, that makes sorry that I had to interrupt you for that, but yeah. The Cyclops just irks me.
Oh, yeah. Well, I hate the really big ones that you fight in the town square here. You're not right there yet. But after you get through the battlegrounds of Athens.
Sure. Yeah.
You get locked in this little sequence in the Times Square where you have to fight 3 of those things.
Right.
And they don't look like this. They're even bigger than these guys. And you have to fight them, and they're so annoying.
Right.
They're the worst thing to get locked in, and that would be in my first disc, right before it freezes, I have that battle. So I'd have to fight through all of these common enemies and then these 3 giant troll things.
Right.
Just to get my game froze. And then when I was locked in there, that's when I was really upset about not being able to cancel my attack animation.
Right.
When I was fighting those guys, I would hit them I would try to get 6 or 7 hits in, and then I would see them start to move, and I would try to dodge roll.
Right.
But I would get stuck because Kratos has this thing where if you land 4 or 5 consecutive hits, he does this little spin, and then he shoots his blades out with both of his arms, and they kind of clap together. He would do that on turn number 7. So I would have to hit it exactly 6 times to be able to cancel and dodge roll out of the way. And if I hit it that 7th time, the troll would hit me, and I would fall flat, and I wouldn't be able to get back up, and he would hit me again.
That's one of the tricks from just playing so many action RPGs. Like in this game specifically, I tend to use square, square, triangle, which is normal attack, heavy attack. And that just ends your attack more quickly by using the heavy attack, where he like takes the blades, he swings them up from like behind his back and slams them down on the ground in front of him. So you don't get stuck into like those long combos. But in other games like Kingdom Hearts and things like that, there's items you can get which actually decrease your combo count that you can do with an item, which means you're doing your finisher faster, and your finishing moves do more damage, and as well as just makes it easier to dodge out of the way and things. So that's just a little trick from playing so many action RPGs that I tend to stick away from the long combos unless it's an enemy that you can dodge very easily, or that you can like juggle, basically. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just oh my goodness, I was frustrated. And that was another thing too. Eventually you encounter these enemies that have magic shields, and you can only break their magic shields with that combo you just mentioned, square, square, triangle.
Yeah.
You can only break them using that move. And it's so difficult because this one part, like I mentioned before with the breakaway floor, if you don't clear the enemies on the screen before the floor breaks away, that's it. It sends to death.
Right.
And there's like 3 or 4 sirens in that room, and then 5 or 6 guys with those magic shields.
Right.
So I'm worrying about the sirens moving all around me, but I would also try to go ahead and knock those guys out, get them first, and then do like one of my magic moves to hit a bunch of them at the same time.
Yeah.
But it's so hard to execute that move perfectly consistently, like just over and over again when you have like 7 enemies attacking you.
Sure. And I see exactly what you're saying. Again, it's one of those things that as you get better at the game, it's not as big of a deal anymore. But 100% as a new player, I can see what you're saying. It'd be like me playing Demon Souls or something like that, right? A similar concept for a game, but much more precise. And there's guys out there who can beat like Dark Souls, Demon Souls games in like 2 hours, hardly taking any hits or anything like that. But I know if I went to play one of those at this point, I'd be having the same sort of troubles you're having right now in God of War. So
I have tried to play Bloodborne at a friend's house. It did not go well.
See, that's one of the games I'm really excited to play at some point. I haven't yet, but I love these style of games. So
same vein, I believe, as Dark Souls, made by the same people, I think.
Yeah, Dark Souls, Demon Souls, Bloodborne, and then that new one, Ghost of Tsushima. I believe that's the one. They're all kind of either made by the same people or all based off of each other. I know for a fact Demon Souls, Dark Souls, and I'm fairly certain Bloodborne were all made by the same people.
Gotcha. Okay.
But
same kind of thing. Oh yeah. All right. Well, I mean, have you got anything else? Obviously, you're game to play this just one more level.
One more definitely. No question about it.
I'm definitely down to play this just one more level. I'm gonna play tonight, as a matter of fact. If I have any time, I'm gonna sit down and try to finish out Pandora's little castle. There, and get myself back to Athens to fight me some Ares.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is one of my favorite games, honestly. So, like, if you only have the chance in the coming days or whatever to play 1 or 2 games, this would be one of the suggestions for games that I would suggest to anybody out there. I love it that much. This and the first Kingdom Hearts game are like, these are the games, in my opinion, you need to play.
Yes.
Just everybody out there.
I think I should give Kingdom Hearts a second chance. I've tried to play it once, and I wasn't disappointed. You know what I mean? But
the first Kingdom Hearts game has a very bad opening. Also, boobies. So we're going to skip a little bit. But
skip.
but yeah, the first Kingdom Hearts game has a very poor opening, in my opinion. It is not very representative of the game at all.
No, I was very confused. I was just running around on this island trying to collect fruit and then but eventually it like took a sharp left turn.
It definitely
I went into this like shadow dimension, and there was this big creature thing, and I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, the rest of the games don't have that same sort of problem, but the first game 100% they missed the mark on the beginning there, and the whole point was they were trying to show that these people had like this calm island life, but they were craving adventure or whatever, and then there was like shit hits the fan. So
there was like some anime drama going on too, like a love triangle and
that's
some other stuff going on. I was like, what?
Oh shit! I somehow forgot his name. I'm really blanking tonight. But the creator of the Kingdom Hearts series, he also did the Final Fantasy VII remake, Final Fantasy 15, and some other things. Yeah, that's his thing.
Some anime drama.
Which is very over the top in everything that he
Gotcha.
does. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
But
Well,
yeah, that's God of War, everybody, and Kingdom Hearts at the same time.
Yeah, a little splash of Kingdom Hearts in there, a little splash of Bloodborne and
Yeah, of course.
Dark Souls and some other things. Yeah, but
Yeah.
mostly God of War. Fantastic.
Any
Absolutely
final words
fantastic.
before we wrap up here?
No, just definitely play this game. You uncovered a secret I didn't know about just now. And the
Where you
and the
turn
footage.
so there's a ballista that you get, and then you can turn the ballista towards a wall that has a slight crack in it. And
did not know that.
yeah, if you do that, you get a extra Phoenix feather there.
That would have been super helpful. No, I just turned it right towards the door.
been.
As soon as I found it, because I realized what I was supposed to do, I was like, oh, that's the door. Okay.
Right. So yeah, be wrapping up. Fuck, I can't think straight. Where can we find you, Jonathan?
Where can you find me? You can find me on YouTube. I play some games on YouTube.
Right.
Gonna be uploading some stuff here pretty soon. I might pick up this Twitch. I really like this idea of long form. Obviously, I love long form entertainment. I do a podcast, but I like the idea of long form entertainment. Just chilling out, playing some games. So you might be able to find me on Twitch in the coming future, under the moniker The Dorseman, of course.
Of course,
My
as long as
YouTube
it's not
channel
already
there.
taken, which I imagine it won't be. So
That better not be. That's my name.
that's my name. And what about anywhere else? You got Twitter too, right?
Yeah, I do have Twitter, John Dorsey 1 / it says The Dorseman when you find me.
Right.
Got Twitter. Not very active on Twitter. I should get more active on Twitter. That's a good point. Instagram as well.
Sure.
The Dorseman again. Yeah, that's where you can find me.
Yeah, so you can find me on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, pretty much everywhere. Stream the Steam or stream all the Steam, just depending where you're looking for me at. And of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, we do have all of the links down below. If you're listening to the podcast, we'll have it in the About section for the podcast. We'll have links for all of our platforms and things like that. And
Yep.
as always, thank you so much for spending your time with us today.
Yes. Thank you. You didn't have to, but you did. And
But
we
you
appreciate
did.
it.
We do. One more thing, real quick. I completely forgot. Jonathan, what are we doing next week?
Oh, next week we are doing the original Final Fantasy
That's
for the
right.
NES.
On the NES. And another one that I believe you're new to, right?
Relatively. I think, tried it out. My friend has it for the NES, and I picked it up, and I was just like, no way, where did you find this?
Right.
It was one of those kind of moments, and so I popped it in, played a little bit, and I was like, I have no idea what's going on. And,
So, yeah.
I've been more dedicated to it. I've put some time into it already, so it's going to be a little bit more of a pleasurable experience this time around. I've gotten a lot more time logged into it, and I'm enjoying it.
Awesome. So yeah, make sure you tune in next week. Every Wednesday we put up the podcast on pretty much every major podcast platform as well as YouTube. And in the future we may do more of these live streaming on Twitch as we record things. So tune in to the Twitch channel. Stream all the Steam if you guys want to watch us record this live.
Absolutely.
All right. And one last time, thank you everybody so much for joining us. You guys have a nice night, morning, whatever it is for you right now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Love this podcast? Support this show through the Acast supporter feature. It's up to you how much you give, and there's no regular commitment. Just click the link in the show description to support now.
Kratos, the gods are pleased with your progress, but your